The council chamber stretched across the void like a palace made of stars and glass. Captain Han Do-yeon stood at the human delegation's platform, his uniform crisp and his jaw tight. He had worn this uniform for 20 years, fighting battles for species that barely acknowledged his existence. Ambassador Choi Mina stood beside him, her hands folded calmly despite the storm brewing in her eyes. She had spent 15 years speaking to walls that pretended to listen. Today felt different. Today felt like an ending. The holographic display showed the smoking ruins of New Harbor Colony. 40,000 human lives had been snuffed out 3 days ago. 40,000 men, women, and children who had begged for help while council ships sat in orbit, watching. Counselor Threx, a massive bird-like creature with silver feathers and cold eyes, spoke without emotion. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind through dead trees. The matter of the human colony was an internal affair. Council forces do not intervene in member disputes. Do-yeon felt his hands curl into fists. Internal affair? Raiders from the Kresh sector attacked civilian targets. We sent distress calls for 18 hours. Your ships were 20 minutes away. The raiders were not affiliated with any council member, Threx replied, preening his feathers with one clawed hand. Therefore not our concern. High Chancellor Vorn, an ancient reptilian being who had led the council for 3 centuries, raised one scaled hand. His voice was dry and distant. Captain Do-yeon, humanity has served admirably for 150 years. We value your contributions. However, the council has protocols. These protocols exist for reasons beyond your young species' understanding. Young species. Do-yeon had heard those words 1,000 times. Always delivered with the same condescending tone, the same dismissive wave. Ambassador Choi stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. We have given you everything. Our soldiers die in your wars. Our engineers build your stations. Our scientists solve your problems. And yet, when we ask for a council seat with voting rights, you deny us. When we request access to medical technology that could save billions, you deny us. When our children burn, you watch? Vorn's eyes, yellow and unblinking, fixed on her. Humanity is not ready for full membership. You are too aggressive, too emotional, too unpredictable. In time, perhaps in another 2 or 3 centuries, we will reconsider. 2 or 3 centuries, Mina repeated softly. How convenient. By then, several more generations of humans will have bled for you. Threx clicked his beak in what might have been laughter. Ambassador, you speak as if humanity has a choice. Without council protection, your species would have been conquered or destroyed decades ago. You should show gratitude, not make demands. Dr. Kang Ji-woo, who had been silent until now, pulled up files on his datapad. His hands shook slightly as he projected classified documents into the chamber's central display. I found something interesting while working on the joint technology project last month. The hologram shifted, showing technical schematics and communication logs. Ji-woo's voice was steady despite his anger. The council has been copying human weapons technology for 20 years. The plasma rifles we designed, the shield generators, the faster-than-light communication arrays. You took our work, claimed it as council property, and sold it to member species while keeping humans at obsolete technology levels. Silence fell across the chamber like a heavy blanket. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Others looked away. Vorn showed no reaction. The council has the right to distribute technology as it sees fit for the greater good of all member species. The greater good? Do-yeon said quietly. Is that what we are to you? A resource to be used and kept in our place? You are valued servants of the council, Threx said, and Do-yeon could hear the smile in his voice. Useful servants. Perhaps one day you will be more, but today is not that day. Servants. The word hung in the air like poison. Ambassador Choi straightened her shoulders. She had prepared for this moment, hoped it would never come, but prepared nonetheless. Then let me be clear, High Chancellor. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all council agreements, treaties, and obligations. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted from 100 platforms in 12 languages. Vorn raised his hand for silence. But several moments passed before the noise died down. "You cannot be serious," Vorn said, and for the first time, Doyan heard uncertainty in the old reptile's voice. "We are completely serious," Mina replied. "We will remove all human personnel from Council facilities within 30 days. We will cease all military cooperation. We will close our trade routes and withdraw from joint defense operations. Humanity is done serving." Threx laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "You will fail without us. You need Council protection, Council trade, Council technology. You will come crawling back within months, begging for forgiveness." Doyan met the bird creature's eyes. "We'll take our chances." "This is foolishness," Vorn hissed. "You condemn your species to isolation and potential destruction. The galaxy is dangerous for those without allies." "We had no allies here," Jiwoo said quietly. "Only masters who called themselves partners." Mena turned to leave, and Doyan and Jiwoo followed. Behind them, the council chamber dissolved into chaos. Members shouted at each other, blaming and accusing. Threx screeched about human ingratitude. Vorn called for order that did not come as they walked through the crystalline corridors toward their ship. Doyan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Mena was silent for a long moment. "I think we made the only choice. They were never going to treat us as equals. Better to stand alone with dignity than kneel with chains." Their shuttle lifted off from Axiom Prime, and Doyan watched the station shrink behind them. Somewhere in that glittering structure, the Council was realizing what it had lost. 40% of its military force, 60% of its technical experts. The species that held their fractured alliance together through sheer competence and determination. Let them learn, Doyan thought. Let them understand what they had taken for granted. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks. Mena had already drafted the withdrawal orders. Within days, every human in Council space would receive the same message: come home. It was time for humanity to walk its own path, whatever that path might bring. Admiral Park Yuna watched the countdown on her command screen. 12 hours until the withdrawal deadline expired. Around her, the bridge of the carrier Indomitable hummed with controlled activity. Officers moved between stations, voices calm and professional despite the magnitude of what was happening. "Status report," she said. Her voice cutting through the quiet chatter. Commander Lee Taeyun looked up from his console. "All human personnel have evacuated from Council military bases. The last transport left Station Gamma 7 20 minutes ago. We're just waiting on the civilian contractors from the orbital shipyards." Yuna nodded. 27 days of the most complex evacuation in human history, and they had pulled it off without a single casualty. It felt like a small miracle. On the view screen, she could see Council ships drifting in the distance. They had been watching for days, uncertain whether to interfere. Most of their command staff had been human. Now those ships floated like abandoned toys. Their alien crews struggling to operate systems they barely understood. "Admiral." "Incoming message from Counselor Threx," the communications officer announced. "Ignore it," Yuna said. "We've heard enough from them." Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on 1,000 worlds. Human engineers packed their tools and walked away from half-finished projects. Human soldiers boarded transports, leaving behind weapons and equipment they had maintained for decades. Human doctors closed clinics that had served alien populations for generations. Governor Lee Junho stood on the observation deck of Frontier Station, watching the last supply ship depart. His colony was one of the furthest from Earth, sitting on the edge of what had been Council-protected space. Now they were alone, exposed, and vulnerable. "The defense grid is online," his security chief reported. "We've retrofitted every satellite with the new weapon systems Dr. Kong's team sent us." Junho nodded slowly. "How long can we hold if someone attacks?" "Against raiders?" "Indefinitely." "Against a Council battle group?" The security chief paused. "Maybe a week if we're lucky. Then we'd better hope they're too busy fighting each other to worry about us." Junho said. Inside Council space, the cracks were already showing. Agent Beak Sora moved through the corridors of Nexus Station, her alien disguise holding up under casual inspection. She had been embedded here for 5 years. Working as a data analyst for the Council's intelligence division, now she was stealing everything she could. Her data drives contained proof of Council conspiracies, military plans, and technological research they had stolen from humanity. But most importantly, she had found the contingency plan, a classified document outlining how the Council planned to subjugate humanity within 5 years, using human-built weapons against their creators. They were going to enslave us, she whispered to herself, downloading the final files. We left just in time? The station around her was falling apart. Without human maintenance crews, power fluctuated randomly. Life support systems failed in sections, forcing evacuations. The cafeteria had run out of food 2 days ago because human logistics officers had managed the supply chains. Sora slipped through the chaos, making her way to the docking bay where her small ship waited. Back on Earth, Captain Han Doyun sat in a strategy meeting with the newly formed Terran Alliance Command. Holographic displays showed the state of the galaxy, and the picture was grim. The Council is collapsing faster than we anticipated, Dr. Kong Jae-woo explained, pointing to red zones spreading across the map. 3 member species have declared independence. 2 more are in open conflict over border disputes. The Council fleet cannot respond effectively because most of their ships are grounded for maintenance they cannot perform. What about the civilians? Ambassador Choi Mina asked quietly. The innocent beings caught in the middle of this? Refugee ships are flooding toward human space, Doyun replied. Thousands of them. They're asking for asylum. We can't take them all, someone argued. We have our own people to protect. Mina shook her head. We're not monsters. We can establish processing centers, provide humanitarian aid. Just because the Council failed them doesn't mean we should. The argument continued, but Doyun's attention was drawn to another report. Council military movements near the Terran border. They were positioning ships, possibly preparing for an attack to force humanity back under their control. Admiral Park, he said, activating a secure channel. Are you seeing this? Yuna's face appeared on his screen. I see it. They're desperate. They think if they can make an example of us, they can hold their alliance together. Can we hold against them? Their ships outnumber ours 5-1, Yuna said calmly. But most of their vessels are barely functional. Their crews are inexperienced without human officers. Their weapon systems are failing without our engineers. Yes, Captain. We can hold. 3 days later, Counselor Threx led a battle group of 50 ships into Terran space. It was meant to be a show of force, a demonstration that the Council still held power. Instead, it became a humiliation. Admiral Park's fleet met them at the border. Only 15 human ships against 50 Council vessels. The Council forces opened communications, demanding immediate surrender and return to Council authority. Yuna's response was simple. No, the Council ships opened fire. Their weapons sputtered and misfired. Plasma cannons that had been maintained by human engineers for decades now failed at critical moments. Shield generators flickered on and off. Navigation systems sent ships drifting off course. The human fleet moved like a surgical instrument. Every shot found its target. Every maneuver was precise. In 30 minutes, the battle was over. 20 Council ships limped away in retreat. The rest drifted in space, disabled but not destroyed. Yuna had given orders not to kill unnecessarily. Retrieve their crew members, she ordered. Give them medical attention and send them home in escape pods. Make sure they tell everyone what happened here. On Earth, the Terran Alliance officially declared independence. Governor Junho's frontier colonies pledged their loyalty not to the Council but to humanity. The human species, scattered across 100 worlds, united under a single banner for the first time in their history. Agent Sora arrived home with her stolen data. The files spread through human networks within hours. Every citizen could see the proof of Council deception, the plans for subjugation, the contempt in which humanity had been held, any lingering doubts about leaving the Council. Evaporated. Ambassador Choi stood before the Alliance Congress, her voice steady and clear. They called us servants. They said we were too young, too violent, too emotional for true partnership. Now they are learning what happens when the servants leave. Their economy crashes without our trade networks. Their fleets drift without our engineers. Their member species tear each other apart without our peacekeepers. She paused, looking out at the representatives from across human space. We did not want this. We sought only equality and respect. But if we cannot have those things, we will have independence. And we will survive. The Congress erupted in applause. Outside, across human worlds, celebrations filled the streets. For the first time in 150 years, humanity answered to no one but themselves. In council space, chaos spread like wildfire. And in the darkness between stars, predators watched and waited, sensing weakness in what had once been the galaxy's most powerful alliance. 3 months had passed since humanity closed its borders. The galaxy was burning. Warlord Kreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching 3 council worlds die on his view screens. His insectoid body, all sharp edges and dark chitin, vibrated with satisfaction. For centuries, the council had kept species like his contained, suppressed, controlled. The humans had enforced that peace with their fleets and their soldiers. Now the humans were gone. And Kreth was free to take what he wanted. Send landing forces to all 3 planets, he ordered, his mandibles clicking with pleasure. Strip them of resources. Enslave their populations. Let the council watch and do nothing. His officers scurried to obey. Across his fleet, hundreds of ships descended on helpless worlds like locusts on a harvest. In the council chamber on Axiom Prime, High Chancellor Vorn watched the same scenes. His scaled hands trembled with age and rage. Around him, the remaining council members screamed at each other in a dozen languages. We must respond with force. Threx screeched, his feathers ruffled and unkempt. We cannot let this insect challenge our authority. With what force? Another counselor shouted back. Half our fleet cannot leave dock. Our ships break down within hours of deployment. We have no engineers to fix them. Then hire new ones. Train new ones. That takes years. We do not have years. Vorn raised his hand for silence. The gesture, which once commanded instant obedience, now took several minutes to have any effect. His authority, like the council itself, was crumbling. We sent ambassadors to Earth, Vorn said quietly, to request aid, to negotiate, and? Threx demanded. Ambassador Choi refused to even meet with them. She sent a message saying humanity has no interest in council affairs. The chamber fell silent. In that silence, everyone heard the truth they had been avoiding. The humans were not coming back. They were content to watch the galaxy tear itself apart, on Earth. Dr. Kang Ji-woo stood in his laboratory, monitoring the activation of the new planetary shield network. The technology was revolutionary, adapted from council designs, but improved far beyond the original. Energy barriers that could withstand bombardment from entire fleets, powered by reactors that would run for centuries. All human worlds are now protected, his assistant reported. The shields are holding stable. Nothing short of a supernova could breach them. Ji-woo nodded, but his expression was troubled. On his secondary screen, he watched intelligence reports from council space. Billions dying. Entire civilizations collapsing. Children starving in refugee camps. Should we be helping them? His assistant asked quietly. That's not our decision to make, Ji-woo replied. The Alliance leadership has been clear. We defend our own. The council made their choice when they watched New Harbor burn. But the words felt hollow in his mouth. Commander Yoon Hyuk patrolled the border between human and council space. His small fleet watched the chaos just beyond their territory. Refugee ships approached daily, begging for entry. Pirates chased merchant vessels right up to the human frontier before veering away, knowing that human weapons were the only thing in the galaxy that still worked reliably. Commander, we have another distress call, his communications officer reported. Civilian transport under attack by raiders. 1,500 beings on board, mostly children. They're 3 light minutes beyond our border. Hyuk watched the scene unfold on his screen. The transport was old and damaged, limping through space. The raider ships circled like predators, taking their time. They knew the transport couldn't fight back. They knew no one was coming to help. Our orders? His officer asked. We do not cross the border, Hyuk said, his voice flat. We do not engage unless human assets are threatened. Sir, we could save them. 5 minutes in and out. They're right there? Hyuk's hands gripped his command chair. I know exactly where they are. I also know my orders. Humanity is not the galaxy's protector anymore. We tried that for 150 years and all it got us was contempt and dead colonists. He watched the transport's shields fail. Watched the raiders dock. Watched the distress signal cut off. Then he ordered his fleet to continue their patrol pattern. That night, Hyuk did not sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his quarters, hearing the screams he had not heard, seeing the faces he had not saved. Orders were orders. The Alliance came first. But the weight of those choices pressed down on him like a physical thing. On Frontier Station, Governor Lee Junho dealt with a different crisis. Thousands of refugees had gathered just outside human territory, forming massive camps in neutral space. They had no food, no medicine, no hope. And they looked to the nearby human colony with desperate eyes. We can't ignore them forever, his aide said. There are children out there dying of preventable diseases. I know, Junho replied tiredly. But if we start helping, where does it stop? We have limited resources. If we spread ourselves too thin trying to save everyone, we risk our own people. So we do nothing? I didn't say that. Junho pulled up supply manifests. We can send food and medical supplies? Basic humanitarian aid? But we don't bring them inside our territory. And we don't get involved in council politics. It was a compromise that satisfied no one. Least of all Junho himself. In council space, the situation worsened by the day. Ancient alliances collapsed. Trade networks disintegrated. Pirates and warlords carved out kingdoms from the ruins. Species that had relied on council protection for generations found themselves facing extinction. Counselor Threx led what remained of the council fleet in a desperate attack against Warlord Kreth's forces. The battle was a massacre. Council ships, barely functional and poorly maintained, were torn apart by Kreth's well-prepared fleet. Threx himself barely escaped, his flagship crippled and burning when he returned to Axiom Prime. He found half the council members had already fled. Vorn sat alone in the great chamber, looking ancient and defeated. We failed, the old reptilian said quietly. We believed we were indispensable. We believed humanity needed us more than we needed them. We were wrong. Threx's pride would not let him admit the same. They abandoned the galaxy. They let billions suffer because of wounded pride. No, Vorn said. We let billions suffer because of our arrogance. We treated our strongest protectors like servants. We denied them equality while depending on their strength. And now we reap what we have sown. Back on Earth, President Shindai sat in her office, reading report after report. The Terran Alliance was safe, prosperous even. Trade between human worlds was booming. Technology advanced without council restrictions. Their people lived in peace while the galaxy burned. Admiral Han Do-yeon entered her office without knocking. His face was haggard, his uniform rumpled. I can't sleep anymore, he said without preamble. Every night I see the casualty reports. 200 billion dead in 3 months. 200 billion beings who might have lived if we were still keeping the peace. We didn't start this war, Dai replied. No, but we could stop it. Our fleet could pacify the major warlords in weeks. Our peacekeepers could stabilize the refugee crisis. Our engineers could get council infrastructure running again. At what cost? How many human lives should we sacrifice for species that called us servants? How many of our children should die protecting beings who watched ours burn? Do-yeon had no answer. He simply stood there, looking old and tired and haunted. Dai's personal screen chimed. A message from Deep Space Monitoring. Dr. Kang's science teams had detected something disturbing. Dimensional anomalies near Warlord Kreth's territory. The readings suggested he was experimenting with weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. The President and the Admiral looked at each other, both thinking the same thought. The galaxy's problems might not stay contained beyond human borders much longer. 1 year after humanity closed its borders, the galaxy was unrecognizable. President Shin Dai stood at the observation window of her office on Earth, looking up at stars that had once represented hope and cooperation. Now they represented only distance and death. The reports on her desk told the story in cold numbers. 200 billion dead, 37 council member species reduced to extinction or near extinction. Warlord Kreth controlled a third of what had been council space. Pirates controlled another third. The rest was simply chaos. Human worlds remained islands of peace in a sea of violence. The shields Dr. Kang Ji-woo had designed held firm. Human fleets patrolled human space without incident. Trade flourished within the Terran Alliance. Children played in parks under blue skies, unaware of the nightmare beyond their borders, but Dai could not forget. Every night, she dreamed of the billions who were not so fortunate. A small refugee ship had entered human space 3 days ago. It carried only 47 survivors from a destroyed world. Commander Yoon-hyuk's border patrol had intercepted them, fully prepared to turn them away according to standard protocol. Then Hyuk had seen the children. He had broken protocol. He had brought them to a frontier station. He had called President Dai personally, his voice tight with emotion. I couldn't turn them away. Not the children. Court-martial me if you want, but I couldn't do it. Dai had not court-martialed him. Instead, she had authorized temporary sanctuary and gone to meet the refugees herself. That was where she met Krell. He was 8 years old. Oh, the equivalent in his species development. His people, the Varan, had been peaceful traders for thousands of years. They had trusted the Council for protection. That protection had never come. My parents put me on the last transport, Krell told her, speaking through a translation device. His voice was small and hollow. They said they would follow. But the ships stopped coming. I waited and waited, but no more ships came. Dai knelt down to his level, this small alien child who had lost everything. I'm sorry, she said, knowing the words were inadequate. I'm so sorry. Why didn't you help us? Krell asked. Everyone said humans were the protectors. Everyone said humans would keep us safe. Where were you? Dai had no answer that would make sense to a child. How could she explain pride and betrayal and the cost of maintaining peace for those who showed no gratitude? How could she make an 8-year-old understand that sometimes the protectors must stop protecting to save themselves? She could not. So she simply said, I'm sorry, again, and held him while he cried. Admiral Han Do-yeon had aged a decade in the past year. He spent his days in strategic command, monitoring the collapse of galactic civilization. He spent his nights staring at walls, unable to escape the guilt that gnawed at him. We could stop this, he told anyone who would listen. One coordinated campaign. 6 months, maybe less. We could crush the warlords, establish safe zones, get humanitarian aid flowing. At what cost? His fellow officers always asked. Less than the cost of doing nothing, he would reply, but the Alliance leadership was divided. The isolationists argued that humanity had already sacrificed too much for an ungrateful galaxy. The interventionists argued that with great power came responsibility, even to those who had wronged them. The debates continued endlessly while the death toll climbed. Du-yeon attended another security briefing, watching holographic displays of galactic chaos. Then Dr. Kang Ji-woo entered the room, his face pale. We have a problem, Ji-woo said without preamble. Warlord Kreth's dimensional experiments. They're worse than we thought. He pulled up readings that made Do-yeon's blood run cold. Tears in the fabric of space-time. Reality itself was beginning to fray near Kreth's territory. If he continues, Ji-woo explained, he could trigger a cascade. The dimensional barriers could collapse. Not just in his territory, everywhere, the entire galaxy could be pulled into dimensional chaos. How long do we have? Doyan asked. Months. Maybe less. The room fell silent. This changed everything. This was not about saving ungrateful aliens or acting as galactic police. This was about preventing the destruction of reality itself. Meanwhile, a delegation had arrived from a group calling themselves the Remnant. They were species abandoned by the Council, left to fend for themselves in the chaos. Unlike the Council, they did not come to demand or beg. They came to offer partnership. Ambassador Troy Mena met with them in a conference room that overlooked the Pacific Ocean. Their leader, a being named Vix, spoke carefully. "We do not ask you to fight our battles," Vix said. "We understand you have no obligation to us. But we ask for the right to trade with you, to buy your technology and supplies. We ask for sanctuary for our refugees, not as charity, but as fellow survivors. We ask to be treated as equals." Mina studied the delegation. They were humble but not broken, proud but not arrogant. They reminded her of humanity before the split. "Why should we trust you?" she asked. "How do we know you won't become another council, treating us as servants once you grow strong?" Vix met her eyes. "You don't. Trust must be built, not assumed. But we offer you something the council never did. True partnership, mutual respect, shared sacrifice. We know what you humans endured. Many of us endured the same. Let us build something better together." Mina found herself nodding. This felt different. This felt right. President Dai called an emergency session of the Alliance Congress. Representatives gathered from across human space, along with observers from the remnant species. "We face a choice," Dai began. "We can remain isolated, safe behind our shields while the galaxy dies. Or we can act not to restore the Council, but to prevent catastrophe." She brought up the data on Warlord Kreth's dimensional experiments. Gasps filled the chamber as the representatives understood the implications. If we do nothing, reality itself may collapse. Our shields will not protect us from that. No border is strong enough to keep out the death of physics itself. An isolationist representative stood. "So we fight one more war for aliens who despise us? How many times must we be the galaxy's savior?" Before Dai could respond, young Krell stood up in the visitors' gallery. His translator projected his voice across the chamber. "My people did not despise you," he said. "We admired you. We wanted to be like you. We did not understand why you left until I came here and learned what the Council did to you. You were right to leave. They were wrong. But please do not let their mistakes kill everyone else." The chamber fell silent. This child, who had lost everything, was not asking for revenge or blame. He was simply asking for a chance to live. Admiral Doyan stood. "I vote we act. Not for the Council. Not for redemption. But because if we have the power to save the galaxy and choose not to use it, we become the very thing we hated about the Council. We become beings who watch others burn and do nothing." The debate continued for hours. The vote was close, so close it came down to a single representative. Finally, the decision was made. Humanity would act, but on their terms. They would stop Warlord Kreth's experiments before reality collapsed. They would offer sanctuary to refugees who asked respectfully. They would trade with the remnant species as equals, but they would not restore the Council. They would not return to servitude. They would build something new, something better. From the ashes of what had failed, President Dai looked at young Krell, who watched from the gallery with hope in his alien eyes. She thought of the billions already dead and the billions more who might live if humanity acted. "We're going to war," she announced. "Not to save the Council, not to play galactic police, but to save reality itself and everyone in it." Admiral Doyan saluted. "I'll prepare the fleet." Ambassador Troy nodded. "I'll formalize our alliance with the Remnant." Dr. Kang Ji-woo smiled for the first time in months. "I'll make sure our weapons work." The machine of human civilization began to move, turning from isolation to intervention. Not with the naive hope they had once carried, but with the hard wisdom earned through betrayal and suffering. The galaxy's darkest hour was not yet over. But perhaps finally dawn was beginning to break. The fleet assembled at the edge of human space like a steel sunrise. Admiral Han Do-yeon stood on the bridge of the carrier Indomitable, watching 300 human warships move into formation. Beside them flew the ships of the remnant species who had chosen partnership over subjugation. "All vessels report ready," Commander Yoon Hyuk announced from his station. "The remnant forces are in position. We await your order, Admiral." Do-yeon took a deep breath. 18 months ago, he had walked away from the galaxy's problems. Now he was leading humanity back into them, not as servants, but as saviors. The difference mattered. "All ships," he spoke into the fleet-wide channel, "our mission is clear. Warlord Kreth's dimensional experiments threaten to tear reality apart. We're not doing this for the Council. We're not doing this for gratitude. We're doing this because if we don't, everyone dies. Including us, engage." The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, streaking across the galaxy toward Kreth's territory. On Earth, President Shin Dai monitored the operation from the command center. Dr. Kang Jae-woo worked beside her, coordinating the technical aspects of the assault. They had discovered that Kreth's dimensional weapon was powered by a massive reactor on his flagship. Destroy the flagship, stop the weapon. Simple in concept, nearly impossible in execution. "The weapon is charging," Ji-woo reported, his voice tight. "If it fires, the dimensional barrier in that sector will collapse. Then it will spread like falling dominoes, sector by sector, until the entire galaxy becomes a chaos dimension." "How long until it fires?" Dai asked. 4 hours. Maybe 5? The fleet would arrive in 3. Warlord Kreth stood in his throne room, watching the dimensional weapon charge. Energy readings climbed steadily toward critical mass. Soon he would possess the power of gods. Reality itself would bend to his will. "Warlord," his tactical officer buzzed nervously, "we detect a massive fleet approaching. Human ships. Hundreds of them." Kreth's mandibles clicked in amusement. "So the humans finally come. Too late. They cannot stop what is already in motion. Deploy all forces. Let them break themselves against our strength." His fleet moved to intercept, over 1,000 ships against humanity's 300. The numbers favored Kreth, but numbers had not saved the Council. The two fleets met in the dark between stars, and space erupted in fire. Admiral Do-yeon watched the battle unfold across his tactical displays. Kreth's ships outnumbered them 3-1, but they were older designs, maintained poorly. Crewed by warriors with more ferocity than training. Human vessels moved like surgical instruments. Every shot was calculated. Every maneuver was precise. Commander Yoon led a wing of fast attack ships through Kreth's formations, targeting command vessels and weapon platforms with devastating accuracy. The remnant forces fought with desperate courage, their ships absorbing damage meant for human vessels. They were repaying the partnership humanity offered with their own blood. "The flagship is heavily defended," Yoon reported. "We'll need to punch through their inner defense line." "Permission to lead the assault?" "Granted," Do-yeon replied. "But Yoon, come back." "That's an order." "Yes, sir." Yoon's squadron dove toward Kreth's flagship like hawks on prey. Defensive fire filled the space around them. Ships on both sides exploded into brief stars. Yoon's ship took hits that would have destroyed lesser vessels, but human engineering held strong. They broke through the defense line. On Earth, Gi-woo monitored the dimensional readings. "The weapon is at 90% charge. 20 minutes to firing." Dai gripped her command chair. "Come on, Do-yeon, come on." Yoon's squadron reached the flagship. He armed every weapon his ship possessed. "All ships, focus fire on the reactor signatures." "Everything we have now." Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and kinetic weapons unleashed simultaneously. The flagship shields flared and collapsed. The hull tore open, and deep within the ship, the dimensional reactor went critical. But not the way Kreth had intended. Warlord Kreth had one moment to realize his mistake before his own weapon consumed him. The dimensional breach he had been trying to weaponize instead imploded, collapsing in on itself. The flagship and everything around it was pulled into a point of infinite gravity and vanished. The dimensional readings stabilized. Reality remained intact. Weapon neutralized, Jiwoo reported, relief flooding his voice. The dimensional barriers are stabilizing. It's over. On the battlefield, Kreth's forces broke. Without their warlord, without their purpose, they scattered into the dark. Some fled, some surrendered. The rest simply drifted, lost and defeated. Admiral Doyun watched the enemy fleet dissolve. Cease fire. Begin rescue operations for survivors, ours and theirs. Commander Yoon, status? Ships damaged but flying, sir, Yoon replied. We lost 43 vessels. The remnant lost over 100. But we're still here. Well done, Commander. Well done, all of you. Victory tasted strange in Doyun's mouth. They had won, but at such a cost. And the galaxy was still broken, still dying. One warlord defeated did not fix everything, but it was a start. Ambassador Troy Mina arrived on Axiom Prime to find the council chamber nearly empty. High Chancellor Vorn sat alone among rows of vacant seats, looking ancient and defeated. Ambassador, he said quietly. You came. I came to deliver a message, Mina replied. She showed no warmth, but neither did she show cruelty. The Galactic Council is dissolved. Your authority is recognized by no one. Your member species have abandoned you. Your time is over. Vorn nodded slowly. I know, we brought this upon ourselves. Our arrogance, our blindness. We treated humanity as servants when you were our strength. Now we pay the price for that mistake. Yes, Mina said simply. You do? What happens now? Vorn asked. Now, humanity and the remnant species are forming something new. The Stellar Compact. A federation built on equality where every member has an equal voice and equal vote. Where no species serves another. Where partnership means partnership, not servitude. And the council species? Those who remain? Mina paused. This was the crucial moment. Any species can apply to join the compact, including former council members. But you will join as equals or not at all. There will be no special treatment for former masters. You will be judged by your actions going forward, not your history. Vorn was silent for a long time. Then he stood, straightening his ancient frame. Then the Council's final act will be to formally dissolve itself and recommend all member species apply to join your compact. Perhaps we can learn what we should have learned a century ago. Perhaps, Mina said. She did not forgive, but she allowed the possibility of redemption. That seemed fair. On Frontier Station, Governor Li Zhenho oversaw the transformation of refugee camps into settlement centers. Species that had been enemies under the Council now worked together to rebuild. Young Krell, the Varan child who had lost everything, helped translate between species, his youth making him adaptable where older beings struggled. Do you think it will work? Junho asked President Dai during her inspection visit. This new compact? Or will it just become another council? That depends on us, Dai replied. The council failed because it was built on hierarchy and exploitation. We're building something different. But it only works if we remain vigilant, if we never forget the lessons we learned. She looked at Krell, who was helping an elderly alien carry supplies. He's young enough to grow up in a better galaxy. That's what we're fighting for. Not for ourselves, but for the ones who come after. The first session of the Stellar Compact convened 3 months later. Representatives from 47 species gathered, human and alien, former council members and remnant survivors. They met not in the old council chamber, but in a new station built specifically for the compact. In neutral space where no species held advantage, President Dai gave the opening address. We are here because the old system failed. It failed because it was built on inequality, on the assumption that some species deserved to rule while others deserved to serve. We are building something better. A system where every voice matters equally, where decisions are made by consensus, where partnership is real and not just a word. She paused, looking across the diverse assembly. This will not be easy. We will disagree. We will argue. We will sometimes fail. But we will do so as equals, respecting each other's dignity and autonomy. That is the promise of the compact. Young Krell sat in the visitors' gallery, no longer a refugee but an observer representing the new generation. In a few years, when he came of age, he would become the first non-human ambassador to the compact, a symbol of the future they were building. Admiral Han Do-yeon retired after the war's end. He had carried the weight of command long enough. He stood at the memorial erected for those who had died in the chaos, both human and alien. 200 billion names, carved in stone that would last forever. "I'm sorry it took us so long," he whispered to the names. "I'm sorry we couldn't save you all." But he had saved some. And the galaxy that emerged from the ashes was better than the one that had fallen. Commander Yoon took his place. Promoted to Admiral, Dr. Kang Jae-woo continued his research, now shared freely with all compact members. Ambassador Choi Mina became the first Secretary General of the compact. Trusted by all species because she had never compromised her principles, the galaxy slowly healed. Trade routes reopened. Refugee camps became settlements, then cities.